7-year-old boy calls 911 because he heard his teenage sister screaming from his stepfather's room. When the police arrive and enter the room, everyone is shocked. The autumn wind rustled through the maple trees lining Cedar Street, scattering red and gold leaves across the neatly maintained lawns of suburban Boston. 7-year-old Ethan Baker sat cross-legged on his bedroom floor, methodically arranging his collection of Hot Wheels cars. By color, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows through his window, creating patterns on the blue carpet his mom had chosen when they moved into the house 3 years ago. From downstairs he could hear the familiar sounds of Richard cooking dinner, the clinking of pots, the rhythmic chopping of vegetables, and the occasional sigh of exasperation that seemed to accompany everything his stepfather did. Ethan's small hands paused over a bright yellow Corvette as Lily's footsteps hurried past his door. She was probably heading to her room again, where she spent most of her time nowadays. Ethan remembered, and Lily used to play with him after school, helping him build elaborate racetracks across the living room floor, or reading him stories with funny voices for each character. That was before Richard moved in and started working longer shifts at the hospital. Before Lily stopped smiling so much, Richard's voice boomed from downstairs, "Get down here and set the table." Ethan heard his sister's door open and close. Her footsteps, now slower, hesitantly, abandoned his cars and crept to his doorway, peering down the hallway. Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, her long brown hair hiding her face like a curtain. She wore the oversized gray sweater she'd barely taken off since school started. Even though the house was warm, "Move it." Richard's voice carried up the stairs. "I don't have all day to wait for you to do a simple task." Ethan watched as his 12-year-old sister descended the stairs. As T.S. White trailing along the banister, he noticed how she made herself smaller somehow, shoulders hunched forward, head down, nothing like the Lily who used to cartwheel across the backyard and sing Taylor Swift songs at the top of her lungs. Following quietly, Ethan sat on the middle step where he could see into the kitchen. Richard stood at the stove, his broad back turned to Lily as she began taking plates from the cabinet. At 39, Richard Cooper cut an imposing figure, tall and solid, with dark hair starting to gray at the temples. To Ethan's second grade classmates, he was Mr. Cooper, the respected middle school teacher who sometimes helped coach Little League, but at home he was different. "Can't you do anything right?" Richard's sharp words cut through the kitchen as Lily fumbled with the silverware, a fork clattering to the floor. "Clumsy little brat, pick it up." Ethan watched his sister quickly bend to retrieve the fork, her hands trembling slightly as she placed it in the sink and took a clean one from the drawer. Richard turned from the stove, closing the distance between them in 2 long strides. Lily flinched, nearly dropping the handful of utensils she held. "Look at me when I'm talking to you," Richard demanded, his voice low and controlled. Lily raised her head slowly, and Ethan could see her face now pale and tight, like she was holding her breath. "What's wrong with you lately? Your mother told me about your math test 80. Are you trying to embarrass me at school?" "And no," Lily whispered, "I'm sorry, I'll do better." "Sorry doesn't cut it. You're lucky your mother works so hard to support you kids. The least you could do is show some gratitude by not acting like an idiot." Ethan's small fingers gripped the banister tighter. He wanted to say something, to tell Richard to stop being mean to Lily, but his voice seemed stuck in his throat. He remembered last week when he tried to defend her during dinner and Richard had sent him to his room without eating, telling him that little boys should mind their own business. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke the tension. Lily quickly resumed setting the table while Richard returned to the stove, his demeanor shifting instantly. By the time Grace Baker entered through the side door, grocery bags in her arms, the kitchen looked like a normal family scene. "Something smells good," Grace said, setting down the bags. She looked tired after her shift at the hospital. Her nurse's scrubs wrinkled her blonde hair, pulled back in a messy ponytail. "Hi, sweetie," she added, kissing Lily's cheek as she passed. "Just trying something new with the chicken," Richard replied, his voice warm and pleasant. "Now Lily, why don't you help your mother with the groceries instead of standing around?" Ethan watched as his sister hurried to comply, her movements quick and nervous. His mom didn't seem to notice, already chatting with Richard about her day at work. Ethan remained on the stairs, invisible to the scene below, his young mind struggling to understand why no one else seemed to see what he saw. Later that night, after dinner had been cleared and homework checked, Ethan lay in bed listening to the house settle into its nighttime quiet. Through the wall he could hear muffled sounds from Lily's room, not crying exactly, but the kind of shaky breathing that came before tears. He wanted to go to her like she used to come to him when he had nightmares, but something told him to stay put. Instead he clutched his stuffed dinosaur closer and whispered a prayer like his grandmother had taught him. "Please keep Lily safe," he murmured into Rex's worn green Fur, please make Richard be nice, please help Mom. See, the wind outside his window had picked up, sending more leaves skittering across the dark street. In the distance a siren wailed briefly.